Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight on reintegrating into society after serving time. For former inmates, getting back on their feet and rebuilding their lives after paying their debt to society isn't always easy. Some experience challenges and barriers when trying to find a job or housing, increasing the chances for recidivism. Tonight, we'll hear about the lived experience for one person who's been through the system multiple times and what officials are doing in Weber County to help people leaving jail and prison get back on the right path. Kicking off our conversation tonight is Toya Reynolds, who is a former inmate. And Toya, thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing your personal story with us.
I'm most grateful to be here. I appreciate you having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. I'd like to start off our conversation with talking about your background and your history. The first time you ever experienced being incarcerated was just at 9 years old.
Yes,
and since then, you've been through the system multiple times. At your own comfort level, can you tell us about your background, your upbringing, and some of the hardships that you've faced in your life?
Well, you know, I grew up in Ogden, Utah, and Ogden was pretty, it was a pretty rough neighborhood, and we all grew up idolizing the wrong people, and pretty soon it became a way of life from us. So a lot of events has happened in my life, but one of the major events that happened to me was the death of my mother when I was 16 years old. And that's when I kind of started turning to hard drugs, and that's when I first got hooked on crack cocaine when I was 16 years old. And I battled with my addiction for a lot of time, and that was the main source that caused my incarcerations and just my faulty decision makings and whatnot, whatever.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that was personal, and it's not easy to be vulnerable here on live TV, but we appreciate you just being real with us. And there's a lot of people who might watch this that can relate to your situation.
There is a whole bunch.
How many times would you say you've been through the system? And if you were to combine all of the times that you've spent behind bars, how long would you say that you've been incarcerated?
Well, sadly, I would say that I've had a total of 25 years behind the prisons.
Wow.
I've been running in and out of prison since 1988.
Wow.
And each time, I fell back to my addiction, which eventually set me back to prison. And I've been to prison 11 times.
11 times.
Out of the 30 years, yeah.
But you're here today with
I'm here
us.
Today.
I really want to know, what was the turning point in your life? What maybe inspired you to change course?
Oh, that's a hard one. I was incarcerated facing the charges that I just did 8 years, okay? And I've been on the street 3 years. Well, the charge that I went in and did the 8 years, I was in jail. I got a phone call that my firstborn son, which was 26 years old, was murdered. And, I talked with the family and all that. But after that happened, I went back to my cell, and I was quite naturally, I was grieving for my son. And all of a sudden, I just felt this presence in the room. And I attribute it mainly, I really believe that that was my son when he was leaving his earthly body, paying me one more visit, because I hadn't been there to raise my son. And the little boy in him always cried out, "Dad, Dad, would you please stop using whatnot, whatever." So I felt that, and I had a conversation with him. And that gave me, I'd heard about spiritual awakenings, but I'd never experienced it. But I didn't discount it, but when I experienced that, and then the coolness and everything left and everything was good, I knew that my life would never be the same. I was touched in a profound way. So the next morning I woke up and I got on my knees, and up until that point I had a general idea of what living a square, healthy, clean lifestyle. I hadn't been clean on the street since I was 12 years old, clean and sober since I was 12 years old. So up until that point, I just got on my knees and asked Heavenly Father to give me the strength and the guidance and the direction. I understood that me at the wheel, my life was unmanageable. So I said, I'm gonna turn it over to you. I'm gonna surrender to you. I'm gonna let you manage all that mundane stuff, and I can just go about my day to day and just continue on working on this masterpiece that I'm working on as myself.
I love that. First of all, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us, and I commend you for being here and sharing that journey with us. How long ago would you say that turning point was for you, just so we have an idea?
The turning point.
Like, when was it that?
It was in 2011. It was December 29th. 2011.
Okay, so 10
Yes.
years. Congratulations
Yes.
on that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we're here tonight is to talk about how difficult it can be to reintegrate back into society. It can be hard for many people to land a job, trying to find a place to live.
Yeah.
Did you experience any of those types of hardships or challenges or barriers as you were trying to rebuild your life?
Actually, I did. You know, it was very hard because as I was saying before, I had to actually learn how to live a whole new total lifestyle. Being down the streets clean and sober, going out working a job and all that stuff. I hadn't done it up until that point. So, you know, there was some bumps along the way, but I just surrounded myself around good, positive people. But the key thing was for me is I didn't wait till I get out to decide what I wanted to do. I spent the whole entire 8 years trying to transform my life so I can go out here and be a productive citizen, you know? And as a result of that, when I got out, I didn't have all that overwhelmness because I was already working in a system within myself.
Yourself, yes.
Yes. And so, but times before, it is super hard if you don't have a plan. If you wait till you get out and then you want to talk about what you want to do and this and that, but you have no really 3 or 4 backup plans or whatnot, whatever, it can be so hard and it's so challenging because the stigma that is on us. We're just regular people, sure. We all make mistakes, some of us more than others, but nonetheless, we're no different from anybody else. I've met some of the most intelligent men behind them walls that could be making products for billion-dollar companies and all that. So, you know, that's just the stigma about it.
Yeah, and
That's
hopefully one of the reasons why we're here tonight is
Yeah.
to contribute to changing that narrative, that stigma, and that perception.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but it's been
Okay.
such a pleasure
It
to
has
have
been.
you on the show. Folks, you've been
Okay.
hearing from Toya Reynolds. He's a former inmate, but has transformed his life 10 years since that changing moment in his life. Toya, thank you so much for being
Can
here
I
tonight.
say one thing?
Yes.
I am here today because I made changes in my life. I'm the voice for all those incarcerated. All those that have a voice that's never been heard, I'm gonna be that voice. I'm gonna make sure that everybody has an equal, fair opportunity coming out of that gate. I made it, anybody else can make it.
You heard it from here. You heard it from Toya. If he can do it, you can do it too. Thank you so much. We'll be
Thank
right
you.
back. Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight on reintegrating into society after serving time. Up next in our conversation is Laura Andelin. She is the lead case manager at the Weber County Correctional Facility. And Laura, thank you so much for being here tonight and being a part of our conversation.
Absolutely.
So in our last segment, Toya touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to come from it from an expert perspective. With your line of work, what have you seen as far as the challenges, barriers, and difficulties that inmates can face once they've finished serving time and are now trying to reintegrate back into society?
I think that's a great question. And I think everything from what we think of a lot as the personal challenges that they may face, whether it's mental health issues or addiction, and even just like cultural, generational kind of things that they have to overcome in their thinking. There's also a lot of system barriers there for them to, from employment challenges and trying to find work, to housing, identification, even as transportation. There's a lot of things that are even smaller in what we think of as our day-to-day that are significant barriers to them getting a lot of those things and being able to be successful in their lives after incarceration.
That's a lot of basic necessities that they have to start over with. Now, what are the long-term consequences for those who are not very successful with reintegrating back into society?
I mean, I think the short answer is recidivism and reoffending, because when they hit those system barriers when they get out, and it is another barrier as well, is the way that our system is structured. A lot of times once you're in that criminal justice system, it's really difficult to be entirely successful and get out of the system. And so it ultimately leads to stress and overwhelm and defeat, and they go back to what they know.
I think what a lot of people don't realize is recidivism comes from people who have tried, right, to rehabilitate their lives and were not successful. It's not just because they wanted to continuously, reoffend and whatnot. Laura, tell us about how reentry services have changed or maybe developed through Weber County and the Sheriff's Office.
Well, we got a new sheriff that was elected just over 2 years ago, and under his administration, he decided to put a lot of focus on trying to bridge the gaps that exist for offenders leaving incarceration, and kind of that address those things that are issues for them, resources they may not be connecting with that end up leading them back. And so prior to that, there had been no social workers, no staff that were focused on trying to help people with that reentry transition employed by the Sheriff's Office. So I ended up transitioning into that position, and about 6 months later, we hired a second person. We still have a 2-person team for the jail, and our focus has been in trying to increase reentry services and help to coordinate reentry and help them get a plan before they go, and set up those connections to resources that they need that will hopefully empower them to reach their full potential.
Now, one of the topics that we're here tonight to talk about is this Reentry Fair, which we will talk about in the next segment. And it's a great resource, but it's just one piece out of like the entire plan of rehabilitation for other people. In your opinion and your expertise, what could we do to better our criminal justice reform, to improve the quality of life or the opportunities that are open for inmates who are trying to get back on their feet?
Yeah, and I agree that the Reentry Fair is a great resource. It really brings a lot of different resources to the table together, where it's easier to access them, but absolutely we can't stop there. There's a lot of things from a system level that need to be changed. One of the things that we've done very recently is form a coalition in Weber County specifically focused on reentry to figure that out and answer some of those questions of what we need to do to try and restructure things and make it easier for individuals to access the resources that they need, and just be more empowering to them.
Laura, we have to wrap, but final words. What would you like to leave our viewers with tonight?
I actually think I would go back to what you said, that these individuals may have a criminal record, but recidivism comes from people who are trying. I can't even count how many people have told me before they left, you can count on me, I'm going to do better this time, I'm going to stay clean, I'm not going to come back. And I really think that a lot of them mean that when they walk out the door, and it's those other challenges and barriers that they face when they get out that make that difficult. And so I think that just remembering that they are people too, and they deserve that effort that we're putting in to try and help.
Well said. You've been hearing from Laura Andelin. She is the lead case manager at the Weber County Correctional Facility. And Laura, thank you so much for being here tonight and being a part of this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on reintegration into society after serving time. Joining us now is Heidi Little. She is the supervisor for the Utah Department of Workforce Services. And Heidi, thank you so much for being here tonight. I know it was a busy day for you.
It was. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to talk about this.
No problem. So today was actually the day of the Reentry Fair. I've been teasing it a little bit throughout the entire segment, and now we finally get to talk about it with you. Tell us what the event is and where did the idea for it come from?
Oh, well, it's I'm super excited about this event. So this is an event that we've been talking about doing for quite a while now, and over the last few months we've been able to form the Weber County Community Reentry Coalition. Part of the coalition goals was to complete a reentry fair where anybody that's justice involved at all would be able to come to a one-stop shop and get all sorts of resources that they need in order to be successful. That's where the idea came from, and it finally happened today. We had our first event this afternoon, and I would say it was definitely a success.
Good, good. What can someone expect if they are an attendee of this event? What do you offer there?
So they walk in and they're greeted by a group of providers. There are several different providers that cover all sorts of different needs, and they walk around to each different booth. They can go with a peer support specialist, or they can go on their own. They can bring family, friends, support people, whatever they choose. We have different providers there, everything from housing to employment. We have people there for mental health services. We have vocational rehabilitation services for people who are disabled or have disabilities of any kind. We have adult education. We have Cottages of Hope, who offer things like budgeting classes and a variety of other services. So they can come in and talk to all of these different providers face to face to find out what services are offered to help them be successful. During that time, they can ask any questions that they have, and they can also schedule appointments with those providers so that they have it set in stone and can move forward with their path to success.
And I think that means so much, because oftentimes when someone may reach out to these services, sometimes you get a voicemail. Sometimes you have to email somebody, you know, you don't, but that face-to-face interaction can mean so much, especially because it tells that person, like, we care about you and we believe that you truly want to turn your life around. Do you know if there's any initiative like this taking place in other parts of the state?
Yeah, so we actually modeled our reentry fair off of the one that is held at the Utah State Prison. They have done it for a few years now, and COVID curbed that for a little bit, but they've resumed it as of just recently. What they do is every Tuesday, just like our fair, they have their people who are exiting the prison system go up and meet with providers before they're released back into the community. They also had their family and friends there to find out about the resources to help them in case they're a little bit overwhelmed with getting back out there, and can answer questions for them as well. As far as any other counties doing anything like this, I'm not familiar with it, but our hope would be that as this becomes more and more successful, that it would go statewide.
Now I'm wondering, who is invited to attend this event? Is it just people who are re-entering the community in Weber County, or can, you know, if someone's watching from Davis County or Utah County and they say, I want to go to this fair, are they allowed to come?
Absolutely. So the fair is open to anybody. It is geared toward those that are justice involved, so people who have any kind of a criminal background, and our service providers are all out of the Weber County area. However, a lot of our service providers are statewide providers, and so they could get information about those services and then apply in the area that they're located.
Good, good. And this reentry fair happened today, but it's not the last chance. If anybody's watching the segment and say, hey, I'd like to go to future events, tell us how often it's going to be taking place, where it's going to be taking place, and how it works.
Yeah, so this is definitely not the last event. We were super excited to kick it off today, but we are holding every single Tuesday, barring all state and federal holidays. Anybody can walk in between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. We're holding the fair at the Ogden Regional Center, which is located at 2540 Washington Boulevard. We're just on the main floor there, and they're welcome to come in every single Tuesday.
Is there a website with more information as well?
There's not one specific to this, but if they are looking for further information on services, they can always log on to our jobs.utah.gov website.
All right, perfect. You've been hearing from Heidi Little. She is the supervisor for the Utah Department of Workforce Services. And Heidi, thank you so much for A, making time for us in your busy schedule since the event was today, and 2, for being part of this crucial conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
It was a pleasure. And don't forget, we'd love to hear from you about the show. We invite you to join our Facebook group by going to facebook.com/group/ABC4InFocus, or you can send us an email, infocus@abc4.com.